Hello, this is a teaching coming to you from the training place of excellence, and it's on overhead absorption rate and cost per unit. It's one out of a two series that we have delivered on absorption rate at a basic level. If you've listened to the recording previously, you will hear and have seen that when we talk about overhead absorption rate, we're looking at the cost of our light. To identify what is the cost of the 1 unit of the product that we make, all those indirect costs, how do we collate it together and then charge it to identify the cost per unit that we have to incur, and that is for you to calculate your overhead absorption rate, which we have seen it is the total budgeted overhead cost to the center divided by your total budgeted work or the activity in that center. And the activity we're talking about is usually units of production or your machine hours or labor hours that the business is operating or will operate with in that period. That period is usually in the month. Let's look at an exercise. JZ Limited is looking to calculate the unit cost for one of its products. It needs to calculate an overhead absorption rate to apply to each unit. So the methods it is considering are units of production, direct labor hours, machine hours. The factory activity forecast is as below: machine hours, labor hours, units, and overheads. The first thing says to us, complete the table below to show the possible overhead absorption rates that JZ Limited could use. This should be calculated to two decimal places. Overheads, you will be expected to throw in your overheads cost, £720,000. Your activity for machine hours in total is 40,000 hours. Then we will calculate the absorption rate as 720,000 divided by 40,000, and that will give me 18. That means that for every machine hour that the product spends in your company or in your factory, you will charge £18 to cover overheads within the organization. We're going to do the same thing for labor and then units of production as well. So I'm going to throw in my labor hours from the table above, 60,000. And you will calculate your absorption rate by doing 720,000 divided by 60,000, and that will give me £12. We've done the same thing for units of production as well. And we are going to progress. The following data relates to making 1 unit of the product in JZ Limited. Materials, labor, production time. Complete the table below to calculate the total unit cost using the 3 overhead absorption rates you have calculated above. These should be calculated to 2 decimal places. We then want to fill in the table below with the machine hour that you would have calculated in your absorption rate table above. But the materials, labor, direct costs will be coming from this very table here. So you have your material cost, which tells me there 3 meters and it costs me £42 for 4 meters. So to find the cost of my 3 meters, I have to do times 42 divided by 4. And that will leave me with the cost of materials that is used per unit of products that you make. We're going to do the same thing for labor as well. Labor, you spend 1.5 hours. and it's charged at £25 per hour, so I just multiply through, and that will give me the cost of labor per unit of product we make. So I can now throw in those figures into the table below, nice and smooth, and then I get the total, which is £69, and that will remain the same across each of the columns. Then my overheads becomes your next challenge. For the overheads, you are literally required to then go back to your overhead table that you calculated previously. I'm in machine hour. My table here tells me that the production time, which is your machine time, is 50 minutes. You spend 50 minutes to make each product. So we have calculated overhead absorption rate at £18 per machine hour. So for one machine hour, you will add £18. Your dilemma now is that we didn't even spend 1 hour, we spent only 50 minutes. Well, the system remains the same. I've spent 50 minutes, so you need to allocate 50 minutes proportion of £18 for 1 hour. I'm sure you know what you need to do, and I expect you to then be looking out for £18 is for 1 hour, which is, in my case, I will call it 60 minutes, and multiply that by 50 minutes, which is the time you are spending on machine hours or machine time that is being spent to make 1 unit of the product, and that will give me £15. So it means because I'm not spending a full hour, I'm spending a proportion. I'm going to be adding only £15 to my cost per unit for machine overheads, and then I plug those together to give me the unit cost that we are looking for at £84. We're going to do the same thing with labor column. For labor, you will be charging £12 per 1 hour of labor time, and in our case we're using 1.5 hours labor time. So I'm going to multiply my £12 times 1.5, because that is the labor time you're spending on each product, and that will give me £18, which is what I will add on to the labor column, and that will give me a total of 87. For units of production, you are literally going to pick up the entire unit of production amount that you calculated, because that is calculated per unit. So we are saying from the table above that for every unit you make, add £14.40 for overheads. So I've literally picked up the entire £14.40 and plugged it in there. Okay, you are now expected to try a question out on your own, and in doing that, I want you to complete the table and the exercises that you're seeing below, and then you compare your answers with mine. So I want you to literally walk through this exercise that is on my screen and then compare it with my own answers. So I will suggest you pause the recording at this point. So now I have the answers on the screen, and I'm hoping you've done yours and you've come up with the same answers. Well done, well done, well done. If not, no big deal. Keep practicing and keep trying and keep studying. But I have put in here a bit of the calculations that I use in getting the figures. So trail it through gently and carefully. You want to remember mainly the table there gives you materials and labor costs. The table there gives you the overhead absorption rate. So there is a connection between that table, and then of course your final answer. But be careful, when I'm calculating the cost of the materials, cost of labor, I'm getting the data from them. Or to, apportion my labor hours, split it up into how much is going to be charged to cover overheads for 1 unit of the product. So you just want to be careful when to use the 40 minutes to calculate your labor time, when to use the 40 minutes to apportion your overhead absorption rate, and that goes into overhead, but it's the same 40 minutes. The same thing with machine time, 45 minutes to allocate and apportion your machine time up there into the overheads row down them. Okay, I hope this has been useful. Please follow us on all the social media platforms, and we try to put in useful content across all social media platforms. Like us, follow us, subscribe to this video if it has been useful for you. Thank you. Adios.